Hola y'all. So today's video is going to be different than I think a lot of the videos that I've presented in the past, because I am quite frankly at a loss of what to do. And this is the best thing that I could think of for right now. And I do apologize if you hear some noise in the background. It is currently around 1 in the morning and I can't sleep. My daughter can't sleep. And I've just been racking my brain trying to think of things that I can do at this point in time. For those of you who aren't aware, there has just been a slew of racist activity taking place. And this is not anything new. This is not something that has happened randomly. The system is working exactly as it was designed. But I think because of the added impact of quarantine and social distancing and unemployment rates being sky high, I think more people are aware of systemic issues within our country than have been ever before. So in this video, I wanted to provide some of you with resources that I have used in the past to help me understand things like systemic racism and white privilege and just general historical context for why and how it is that the U.S. utilizes race in the way that it does. Now, I do need to make a couple things clear. Here's the reality of the situation. You know, I look like a white person. I present as white in a variety of spaces, which gives me privilege that my husband doesn't get, my daughter doesn't get, my son doesn't get. This is something that I've had to grow to understand, because when we talk about intersectionality, we often talk about the ways the intersections of our identities create oppression for us, but I don't think we do enough conversation about the ways in which the intersection of our identities can actually create privilege for ourselves. And so, being a non-Black person of color who presents as white, this has been something that I've had to grapple with over the years. I really want to use this video as a way to create a dialogue about that. I watched an Instagram live that was hosted by Kat Lazo, who is a content creator and has made a lot of really incredible videos about a variety of topics. And this was something that she talked about with Guadalupe Ambrosio, who is a fat acceptance activist and an undocumented immigrant. I think these are conversations that our community, in particular non-Black Latinx people, need to have. We like to think that situations involving police brutality, involving anti-blackness, do not concern us because we're all Latino and all of us are mixed and all of that. But I find that that sentiment is incredibly disingenuous. George Zimmerman was a non-Black Latino, and he killed Trayvon Martin, murdered Trayvon Martin. Jeronimo Yanez was a non-Black Latino, and he murdered Philando Castile. In Miami this past weekend, Patricia Ripley, a non-Black Latina, murdered her son and blamed it on 2 non-existent Black men. The list goes on and on. And this is just anti-Blackness perpetrated by non-Black Latinos within the US. We're not even talking about the anti-Blackness that is perpetrated in a lot of our home countries. I do not have all the answers, and I myself am on a learning journey. I'm not going to sit here and pretend to be holier than thou, because at the end of the day, I myself have said and done things that are racist. full stop. I have Black children, I have a Black husband, I taught in Black schools, and I can still be racist. These two things are not mutually exclusive, because I think our understanding of racism is the guy who is wearing the MAGA hat, shouting at immigrants to go home, calling people the N-word, but it's not enough about the systemic realities of our country. So with all that being said, I want to share with you some resources that I have used to unpack a lot of these feelings, ideas, sentiments that I've been having. And then I would also like to make space in this video for other people to share their resources. I could probably create a playlist. If you want to drop recommendations down in the comments, I want us to create resources for each other so we can be more honest to ourselves and to the world. And I think it's high time that we stop asking Black people to do this work for us, because enough's enough. The resources are available. We just need to actually do the work at this point. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into it. These are the resources that I've used for my own unlearning and relearning that I have found to be particularly helpful. First resource that I want to talk about is a workbook called Me and White Supremacy by Layla Saad. If you don't know who Layla Saad is, she has an Instagram account, and I'll link all that information down below. She also has a podcast, which I highly suggest you listen to, called the Good Ancestor Podcast. She created a workbook for primarily white people, but I do think that it's a workbook that can be for anybody, particularly if you're a non-Black person, that essentially forces you to understand the prejudices you have within Black identity. I use this workbook myself, and I used it during my 8th year of teaching, and I was shocked by some of the revelations that I had about myself. Again, like I said earlier, it's really easy for us to think, well, I have Black X, Y, and Z in my life, so there's no way that I can be racist. But I think starting off your anti-racist work with a book like Me and White Supremacy can really push you to think more critically about that. Because racism is complicated. And like I said before, it's not just the guy wearing the KKK hood. It's just calling the manager because you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. It's calling the cops on a family having a barbecue. It's suspending students of a particular race in higher numbers because they just happen to act out more than other students. Racism is very complicated, and it's within every single part of our society, and that's what Layla's book does so well. It forces you to analyze the different ways that anti-blackness can present itself within different groups of people. The next book that I'm going to recommend is The Black Panther Speak by Philip S. Foner. I read this book in February, just before I started my booktube channel, and I think the Black Panthers are quite honestly the most misunderstood political group within the United States. They have this reputation for being incredibly militant, which they were, but not enough of the reasons for that militant nature is discussed. So in this book, Black Panther Speak, it's essentially a collection of primary sources that are taken directly from either newspapers that the Black Panthers put out, interviews that were conducted with them or by them, and essays that they wrote, things of that nature. So getting to understand this group from their own perspective is, I think, really important. Oftentimes when we learn about history, we learn about it through secondary sources. So getting to see it from their own perspective is a really essential process to understanding the group and how it functions. One thing that I do want to share with you all is essentially their platform, essentially, what it is that they were fighting for. Because I think it is still sadly incredibly relevant to this day. Number 2, we want full employment for our people. Number 4, we want decent housing. Number 5, we want education for our people. Number 7, we want an immediate end to police brutality and the murder of Black people. And I'm going to stop it there for this book because, you know, this group was active primarily in the 1960s in the height of the civil rights movement. And in so many ways, things have not changed at all in this country. So I think understanding the desires of this group and the reality of what our country looked like in this time period, I think that will help you better understand movements like Black Lives Matter that we see existing today. The next book that I want to recommend is even more of a historical lens, and this is Barracoon by Zora Neale Hurston. So this book I read last year, and this book was published posthumously. It tells the story of Cudjoe Lewis, who was essentially the last person brought over on a slave ship to the United States at the time of the writing of this book. So we have these ideas about slavery, again, because we learn about them through these secondary sources. Either we've watched a documentary or we've read a book, but how many of those books interview people who were in Africa, abducted, and then brought over to the US? Not many. So I think this is a really critical part of the puzzle to understanding the function of white supremacy and the function of how race is understood in the US. Zora Neale Hurston is one of the most gifted writers in our country's history. And this book was overlooked because of the truth-telling that she was doing. She could not get it published while she was alive. Coupled with completing the Me and White Supremacy workbook, because I did both of them around the same time, I think it really helped illuminate a lot of gaps in my own knowledge that I had about what slavery actually was and how it functioned. The next book that I want to talk about is primarily for educators or people who are interested in working within education and want to better understand how racism functions within that field. The Trouble with Black Boys and Other Reflections on Race, Equity, and the Future of Public Education by Pedro Noruega. Now, Pedro Noruega is an Afro-Latino, and I've actually got to hear him speak at an educators conference a couple years ago. This book essentially follows how Black boys in particular are affected by a lot of the policies that most public schools have in place. And it goes over statistics of things like overdiagnosis of ADHD and ADD within Black boys specifically. It talks about the rates at which Black boys tend to be suspended and expelled from schools compared to their white peers. And just generally like the learning style differences that exist for Black boys compared to their white peers. I think this book, and I have another book, Being Bad, which follows the story of one student, the author's brother, and basically how he went from living in a family with a single mom who was very involved in his life, and yet he still wound up in the school to prison pipeline. The last book that I am going to recommend is a book that I read several years ago. I think it was in 2016 or 2017. And this book is called Of Poetry and Protest, and it is edited by Philip Cushway and Michael War. So this book talks about so many different people, from Emmett Till to Trayvon Martin to so many different events. You have a collection of poems as well as essays by some of our greatest minds. So some of the people in this book: Terrence Hayes, who's an incredible poet, Rita Dove, Toy Derricotte, Major Jackson, Harriet Mullen, so many poets who have such a different perspective on conversations about race, because their focus is not purely information and academic basis. They are also looking at things through an emotional lens, right? Because at the end of the day, that is the goal with poetry, is to create that emotional lens, that emotional connection. And that is what I really appreciate about this book. I think you can give people all the facts that you want, but if they don't feel it, if they don't understand it, if they don't have that personal connection to the issue, they're not going to care about it. So I think this book is a great way to build that emotional connection. Those are the books that I would say have been the most formative in my understanding of race and protests and racial discrimination and white supremacy. This is not an exhaustive list. I have read other books as well, but these are the ones that have consistently stuck out to me the most. I am linking several things down below. So I am linking a Google Doc that has been passed around on social media a lot, but in case you have not seen it yet, basically lists out different anti-racist resources that you can use in your own self-development. I am linking different funds that you can donate to, particularly for Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and for George Floyd, because those are the most recent events related to police brutality. And I think at the end of the day, you can read all the books, you can go to all the protests, you can post the right thing on social media, but we live in a capitalist country. Money talks louder than all of those things. So I'll be linking those funds down below. I will also be linking scripts that you can use to call senators in the various states where some of these atrocities have taken place. And I would love it, as my final question, if you all could list out other resources. Like I said at the start of the video, my goal with this is to compile resources that we can share amongst each other that maybe other people on BookTube are not aware of. If you'd like to make your own version of this video, I would really love that, because I would like to create a playlist of all of these videos. And if you could use the hashtag anti-racist resources, that would be great. I used primarily books in my video, but you might have other resources like podcasts, movies, lectures that you like to watch, and so on, art that you like to look at. I think we can get really creative with some of this stuff. But I just feel like on BookTube, there's this very apolitical nature that a lot of people take, and that is such a privileged stance to have, considering a large portion of our population in the United States was not allowed to read for hundreds of years. Everything we do in our lives is political. The fact that we can read books, the fact that we can go drive in cars, the fact that we can go buy things at a grocery store, all of these are political acts. But it doesn't feel political to us because we've had access to it for so long. And I'm just getting to this point where I can't pretend that this isn't something that's crossing my mind. I can't sit here and pretend that I'm okay when every time my husband leaves to go to the grocery store, a part of me wonders if he's ever gonna come back. And my privilege is in knowing the fact that, like, nothing's gonna happen to me, most likely, you know? And so I just want to make space for people on BookTube who want to talk about these issues, but don't know where to start, or have been talking about these issues, I would like to connect with you in some way, because I am really new to the community. This is only my second month making videos. But I just can't keep pretending like real life isn't happening. So thank you all. You know, all my social media stuff's down below if you'd like to follow me. And please, again, share some resources, donate, call a senator. We're all stuck at home anyway, most of us. So we've got time. It's just a matter of using it. Ciao, y'all.